All right, can everyone hear me okay through this? If I go through, good. Welcome to September 8th board meeting. What, a little bit better? Can you still hear me okay now?
Yes, yeah, that's
Okay,
better.
good, that's not so loud.
Yeah.
Saxophone.
All right, convening our regular meeting, summary action, summary of actions taken during closed session. I suspect there is no reportable action.
You got that
All
correct.
right,
That's correct.
and I'm gonna stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, but I'm gonna stand slowly.
What happened?
Ready? Begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I trust that everyone had a nicer Labor Day weekend than I did. And may I ask one of my colleagues to move to approve tonight's agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Director Jensen, second by Director Grace. Christie, roll call vote, please.
Director Grace?
Aye.
Director Jensen?
Aye.
Director Quinn?
Aye.
President Han?
Aye, motion carries 4-0. And we have a staff introduction.
We do.
Oh, they're all out in the parking lot.
Everybody go to the parking lot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to introduce a police officer, James Stella. This is our chief of police, Dan Suttles, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Board of Directors.
Could you get the microphone up and on, please?
If I could, I'd ask our new officer to step over here with me. So as you know, about 2 weeks ago now, we added one more officer to our ranks. He's filled our part-time position. We obviously are very excited to have him. We've been going through a process for quite some time to try to find the right person, and we truly believe that we have found the right person. So again, this is Officer Jay Stella. So a few highlights. Jay was a United States Marine. He was in the Marine Corps in 1986. In 1991, he joined the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. So he's been a police officer or a deputy for quite some time. In 1994, he went to the White Pine County Sheriff's Department in Nevada. And then in 1995, he moved to the Lewiston Police Department in Idaho. In 2000, he came back to the Sheriff's Department, so the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, where he worked in the jails. He's worked in patrol, the mounted enforcement team. He also ran the equestrian mounted volunteer program, which I'm very excited about because that is a skill that I think that we could take advantage of. He's also a use of force instructor for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, a CPR instructor and a first aid instructor. And then he finished out his career working at the Antelope Valley Courthouse. He retired in November of 2021, so he hasn't been retired for very long, so we got somebody fresh from retirement. And he's been living here in Bear Valley since October of 2020. So he's already been a resident. So again, we're extremely happy to be able to add somebody to our ranks, and even more so, we're excited to add somebody with such a resume to bring this type of experience in, and that's it. I give you Officer Jay Stella.
Would you like to say some words, Officer Stella?
It's nice to be here. I look forward to the job. I really wasn't looking for a job when I retired. I was gonna kind of be retired for a while, but the chief does the Wednesday morning breakfast, and my wife and I, Deborah, went down to meet him one morning, and we spent about an hour and a half talking to him, and he said he had an open position, and I thought he's just the type of person I'd like to work for. So if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even be standing here. So
Nice, nice.
other than that, that's about it.
Thank you.
Just, so we're just looking forward to trying to get back to the community what we can, so.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right. Public comments on non-agenda items. Ms. McEwen, please.
Members of the public may address the board on matters not listed on this agenda. The board cannot take action on any item that is not on the agenda. The board or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed, or may ask questions for clarification. These items may also be referred to staff or scheduled on a future agenda. There will be a separate opportunity for public comment for each item on the agenda.
Speaker cards.
One speaker card, Leanna Mitchell.
I won't need the timer. Very fast. I came to publicly apologize to Mr. Jensen. I am very sorry for the post that I made, and I apologize for any pain to you and your wife. I assure you that will not happen again, and I hope at some point you and your wife will forgive that lapse of tact. Thank you.
Other public comments? Yes. We are gonna run a 3-minute timer though.
Perfect.
My name is Judith Cagle, and I have just a few thoughts regarding the upcoming elections. Director Hahn, thank you for your leadership. Director Grace, thank you for constantly seeking information and asking for proper decorum in these meetings. Director Quinn, I admire your willingness to put yourself forth as a candidate, considering how much of this past year has played out. Director Jensen, I thank you sincerely and deeply for striving to bring forth issues where passions run high. If wanting to know our financial status and seeking ways to support it makes me a Jensenite, I accept that title. To the candidates running for a place on the board, remember many voters will perceive personal attacks on a standing or a running board member as a probable indicator of a candidate's future inability to work with these same parties with regard to taking care of our community. Argue the issues and leave personal attacks to lesser people. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw your hand up, Jiva.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have the phase 2 water study that I understand we're still waiting on. Don't know what the status is, was hoping that maybe later that the general manager could speak to it. But one thing I wanted to get clear is the project objectives for that RFP says the district owns a 50-year-old system here, 110 miles of road, we all know, but the district recognizes a need to develop a better understanding of the condition of the water, develop a risk-based prioritized plan, and that would service and renew this entire system for the next 20 to 25 years. It also discusses that the majority of the system, the mains are constructed of asbestos pipe, cement, PVC, and there's a lack of proper trenching, bedding, and water that's coming up. So I just wanted that, if there was opportunity to clarify that, because a lot of people, including myself, are talking about infrastructure needs. And are we talking about everything, or just a few areas that we're looking at to potentially be repairing and addressing in the years to come? And then secondly, as I've stated, I'm interested in the board pursuing the general manager hiring a public works director. When I questioned that on BBS Exchange and wondering when the job recs have been out there, I was told that it was at the discretion of the general manager to fill that position. I think it's really important to have an engineer, qualified person with us pursuing these big infrastructure issues. So I really appreciate your time on that. Thank you.
Other public comment? Ms. Cooper?
I'd like to address what happened on July 8th to the 11th when the payment box had a theft, and the lack of communication to all the water customers by the CSD. Should have been immediately handled on the 11th. Communication should have been given out to all the customers because your bank account can be drained and gone to zero in that short of time. The lack of communication made a lot of customers angry, and you need to take ID theft a lot more serious than it seemed to be. It seemed to be a lack of total customer concern or care in this case. Unfortunately, it wasn't handled very well from start to finish. They should have been telling people to put a freeze on their account, not just a check bounce. They should have also said that they should need to go down to the bank and close the account, open a new one, and also make a police report for each check. This is so that the bank can have a trail for your own safety. That is some important information that was never brought out. Also, because the staff was never really informed on what to do and how to do it, people were coming back 2 and 3 times to get the bills right. And that made people angry, and the poor staff out there were getting angry and yelled at, because I could tell, because I came in just to pay a bill, and they were like, thank God you're just paying a bill. So anyway, I think we need to work on having a protocol in place. If it ever happens again, God forbid, but we need to get notification out to everyone as fast as we can. All of the private industries do, because if you don't, you lose customer faith and you don't feel like you're being cared for. And this is a customer concern, we are a customer care business, whether you think so or not. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public comment? See no hands. Item 10 is our consent calendar, Mr. Keelan.
Consent items are considered routine and are intended to be acted upon in one motion without discussion. During this portion of the meeting, the consent calendar will be read aloud. Prior to approval, the president will give the board, staff, and public the opportunity to pull any item for discussion. The remaining calendar will be acted upon. Any pulled items will then be heard and acted upon individually. A, approve minutes of the July 14, 2022 regular board meeting. B, approve minutes of the August 4th, 2022 special board meeting. C, accept July-August 2022 committee report. D, approve master service agreement with InfoSend for data processing, printing, and mailing service. E, accept monthly investment report as of July 31, 2022. F, accept register of warrants for July 2022. G, accept register of warrants for August 2022.
Thank you. Items to pull from the public. Jiva or Ms. Freeberg?
Yes, the July 22 and the August one, please. Thank you.
I think that's items F and G. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Anybody else? Staff? Board?
Nope.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve items A, B, C, D, and E, please?
I'll make that motion to approve consent calendar items A, B, C, D, and E.
Second.
Motion by Director Grace, second by Director Jensen. Roll call vote.
Director Grace?
Aye.
Director Jensen?
Aye.
Director Quinn?
Aye.
President Han?
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Ms. Freeberg, would you approach the podium and tell us what you have to pull for F and G?
Thank you, Mr. President. In the July one, 15864 and 728 Arrowhead Enterprise Inc. Forestry Service, Logs Hall, CAL FIRE grant, it's a blank, so not sure what that means. They didn't get a blank check, I'm sure.
It was voided.
Oh, it's voided?
Okay.
Yep. Okay, and then, let's see, we have August 15903, no, 15970 for the Chevy Tahoe emergency equipment install. Just was wondering, is that for the Bear Valley PD, the additional police equipment? Is that yes? Thank you. And then, the Ahern's Rental CAL FIRE grant water for log shredding for $2,893.07. that be explained?
Yes. So one of the last parts of that project was chipping the logs that were at the wastewater treatment plant. And even with the largest chipper that they had, a lot of dust came up. So in order to control the dust and keep it from spreading to neighboring homes and places, we rented some water trucks so that we could have them at positions. If anybody drove by while it was underway, you'd see about 4 different water hoses to control the dust that came. Some of those trees were so dry that they just exploded with dust when they hit that chipper. The other ones we were able to control pretty well, and this was a big part of it.
Well, thank you for that. So, they were paid $20,000 for chipping, and it wasn't their responsibility to keep it safe and keep the dust down. So we took that on out of the
Yes.
CAL FIRE budget that we
Yes.
passed. Thank you very much, appreciate that.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve, may I have a motion to accept F and G then, please, colleagues?
I will make that motion to accept consent calendar items F and G.
Second.
Motion by Director Gray, second by Director Jensen, roll call vote.
Director Grace?
Aye.
Director Jensen?
Aye.
Director Quinn?
Aye.
President Han?
Aye, motion carries 4-0, consent calendar items are all approved. Disclosures by the Board of Directors, Ms. McEwen.
Board members are asked to disclose any outside communications with individuals and organizations that have an action item on this agenda that pertains directly to them or their specific personal or private interests, and which communication is not included or disclosed in the agenda package, so that all interested persons have an equal opportunity to express and represent their interests.
Mr. Jensen,
I have none.
anybody?
Nothing.
I have none.
None from me, thank you everyone. Action items, Alpha, accept California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, Fire Prevention Program grant. Mr. Mallon.
Mr. President, members of the board, as you know, we were successful in getting a CAL FIRE grant, which we were just kind of explaining the very tail end of that project. We have track 3461 up the top of the mountain. That was the one that has been identified as the most severe area for dead and dying trees. That would be a fuel for a wildfire. So it's called a fuel reduction grant. In that first one, we had a forester and a logger working with the residents. I think it went pretty well in terms of our procedures. And obviously then we had the logs and we've wrapped up. We're gonna wrap up the final details. But nonetheless, we didn't get through all of that tract. There were still acres of and properties with trees. So we made a second request. And again, from a board policy, you may recall, the staff may go for grants. If they don't cost us any matching dollars, we can forge ahead. But otherwise, the board sees it before we accept anything. That's the case here. So we've called it phase 2. If you looked at the narrative and if you looked at the budget, et cetera, you'll see it's essentially just a continuation of the project that we began in the same area. And frankly, we may come to find, because even in the first phase, when we would have identified the volume and the acres to be treated, and then the logger and forester came back, there were more in the same area. So trees are still dying up there, unfortunately. So this would, I think, assist with that, as well as just getting to the other properties in a probably 600 acre-ish area. So one of the things you'll see in here, based on our experience in the last grant, we had a couple of additions to the forester. Those are the folks that come up and work with the logger. And that budget, we moved up to 70, which is where we ended with the last grant, coming to the board for a couple of addendums to that agreement as we were moving through. Everything else be the same. The expectation, I think, for moving forward, if you approve this, is I would probably recommend we, use the same forester, that's Davy Resources. They have professionals on staff who've worked with us through that first phase. And then relative to the logger, that we put out an RFQ, as we did last time, and get interest from hopefully the Arrowheads and the others, in the area that had responded the first time. But it's $1 million deal, and so we're gonna, give other folks that opportunity, and I think that's fair. So, with your approval of this, we can begin to expend funds, and move forward. So, again, we have the same kind of 3-year timelines, and everything seemed to work pretty smoothly. Credit to Perla Victor for her work in directly talking with the grant agency, Cal Fire, and every time we've had a need to tweak something, it's been possible, and thank you, Perla, for that work. And she's got a binder of probably about 8 inches thick of all the paperwork that we have associated with each and every parcel, and the forester and the logger. So I think it's a great opportunity, but I'll leave that to the board whether you wish to have us pursue. Again, this is not a service this CSD necessarily has under its purview, but we initially took it on because we saw the opportunity to help the private property owners up there who have thousands and thousands of dollars of trees that need removal, if that's the right way to put it. And so we're helping our folks while we're also reducing the fire risk should that ever occur. So I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Public? Yes, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. So just curious, whether there's a thank you, Chief, MOA or MOU with the contractor, and if so, has there been any consideration, because these trucks are coming and using our roads, correct, to go out there to collect logs, for any kind of use of that grant money to put in some kind of account for road maintenance, for impact to our road system, even if it were a nominal amount? I mean, it still adds up, and I don't know if that's an option that's available to us, but every little bit helps in that case, especially when you have heavy trucks using our upper roads that are already in bad shape. So just thought I'd throw that out there for consideration.
Mr. President, there is some amount within the budget for the road crews.
Okay.
And I know Daniel and his folks have been out there. It hasn't been, destructive. But I think he's aware of where there could be impacts. I will put this forward. During that last grant, it was certainly my intent that no log trucks go out the front door. And I think we achieved that. So in the next go around, when we do, and we do have agreements with both the forester and then a contract with the logger. So that the terms and things are all set out.
Gotcha.
I'm looking to put a requirement to go out deer trail. If you have to leave here, you go out deer trail, because part of the challenge with Arrowhead, and again, I think they did a fine job for us and for the community, but they saw it as treacherous for them. Other logging trucks have used it successfully for years. So I don't know his reticence, but nonetheless, whoever wants to do this job, and if they have to take it out, they figure out if they can sell it or if they can chip it and give it away, whatever. But if they gotta go out of here, they go out deer trail. So, FYI, we'll have more conversation about that as we bring it to you in terms of consideration, but when we put out the RFQ, that's what I expect to do. So, that answers your question.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Other comments from the public, Ms. Cooper?
It's about the chipping. I think you should be aware that NIST did 200 studies on it, and they found out the wood chips propagate flames. They're the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a big government company. And I think they don't want any chips or mulch within 30 feet at least of any houses in high fire areas because of this. It propagates flame, it propagates embers, and if it's along a wood fence, it accelerates the flames. So they did, this is a government you can check on online, read the article yourself. So it's something that we should be aware of, that we need to use less wood chips and mulch around our fire area. It's probably gonna be banned in a few years, so something to look at.
Thank you. More public, Ms. Beaver?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank Perla and the general manager for all the work of getting us a second grant. That is really nice. A couple of things I read in there. In your proposal, it was like March 26th, this would all have to be done, but something back from CAL FIRE said it was a year from the final signature, so don't understand that. It also says something about purchasing logging equipment, and I think you noted we wouldn't be purchasing any logging equipment. As far as the forester goes and the logger, I've had several complaints and will provide those to you because we were told one thing with the forester when they evaluated the properties. Me personally, my neighbor, this tree has been dead, it was there, it was to be pulled down. The forester didn't back him up on it and the logger refused to, and within a few weeks, finally, the owner had to pay $1,000 to fall the tree. There's trees that the forester stood there and said, yeah, those are fine, I don't have to do them, and left them as widowmakers. And there's lots of logs up there that should have been removed. So I questioned the forester, even though I like them both, and I've talked to him plenty of times, that we would not use him again, we would put it out to bid also. So I wanna make a point of that. And also, the forester did refuse to go down Deer Trail, even though it was in the first contract. So there must have been some wiggle room, and I appreciate the general manager saying that he's gonna address that this time. So, and will the RFP be posted to wherever loggers look for this kind of stuff, government work or whatever, and for the forester person, or is it just gonna be sent to several people that we know in the area? So that's my other question. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the hard work you did on that. And a lot of people are happy about the work getting done, but they're not happy that it wasn't done the way they said it was gonna be done. So thank you again, bye.
Public, anyone else? Ward?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to say congratulations to everybody that was a part of this. I think any dollar that flows into this valley to help our residents is much appreciated. Bill, you made the comment about this is not really what we do. You and I have had discussions on that, and we kind of disagree to some point. We are the governmental agency and we are the conduit for these kind of grants. So in that regard, this is what we should do. I've always pushed for more, looking for more grants, beating the bushes wherever we can find money, and have always met resistance in that. I think reforestation is really something that I would challenge staff to not take the road of we don't do that, and really consider that as an opportunity to reach out to the public, to help these folks rebuild their properties, instill value in the valley, understanding trees are gonna take decades to recover what we've lost. We've really lost a significant asset. It's a sad situation, notwithstanding the safety component, but just the value to our collective valley, not to say nothing of the specific homeowners. So I would really challenge staff to look at that hard. Reforestation, finding species of pine that are not amenable to bark beetle infestation or other conifers and other evergreens. You know, I think it's an opportunity for the CSD to do something good for the community, which this certainly is. It's not to diminish this, but again, it's just a challenge to take the high road and get outside of our comfort zone and rebuild. So those are my only comments.
Yes, sir. Mr. Jason.
Excellent points about the reforestation. I spoke to someone here in the community that's involved with a group that works with grants on reforestation and things like that. I think I might have mentioned it to you at one point. We'll have to get back together on that and discuss it again. I think reforesting those areas is very important. You're gonna end up with flooding and watershed issues up there galore. So, other than that, I'm really glad we got this second grant.
Great, yeah. To the point of the topic tonight is the second grant. How do my colleagues feel? Shall we push this motion forward?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to accept California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection CAL FIRE Prevention Grant.
Second.
Motion by Director Grace, second by Director Jensen. Roll call vote.
Director Grace?
Aye.
Director Jensen?
Aye.
Director Quinn?
Aye.
President Han?
Aye, motion carries 4-0. Good. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Item Bravo, under action items, accept deed of easement for equestrian/hiking trail at 27591 Cumberland Road. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, President Han. Before you
This
this
seems like-
evening is a proposed easement, thanks to the continuing good efforts of the BVS Horsemen's Association to search these out, to find homeowners willing to grant these easements. Aaron and Jessica Bertoni stepped forward. They have a fairly large parcel on Cumberland Road. I'm not sure how the cost allocation was between the two. It might have been just the BVS HA that paid for the surveying and the legal description, so this is not at a cost to the district. The form of easement is what we've been using, prepared by our office, that attempts to strike a fair balance between protecting the easement grantor's rights and our rights to use the easements, and the BVSA is prepared to maintain, if accepted, the new trail to the system, which would help connect Cumberland Road with the upper trail. So it's a nice addition to the trail system, and again, at virtually no cost to the district in accepting this.
Great.
Thank you.
Members of the public? Board? Director Grace?
Again, a great addition to enhance our community. Congratulations to Mr. Davis for clearly legally defining with plats and legals the easement. We've got so many easements on old parcel maps across the valley that say equestrian easement, no dimensions, no nothing. So this is a step in the right direction. I presume we'll see more of this as we go forward, but just a great addition to our trail system. So thank you.
And show the good picture, Christie, that's the bad assessor's map, but Director Grace is referring to. Actually, there is the survey is nice, it's clean, and we have a good document, and you have terms.
Homeowners appreciate that when they know exactly where.
Everybody,
Yeah.
we have rights and they have rights, and as I said,
Yeah.
when I was preparing these easements, this is, probably the fourth now we've done the last few years, is to be fair, because we're preparing these, but I want to protect the property owners, but also protect the district. And the Bertoni said no issue with what was proposed. And here you can see a nice clean document showing where it is. And I think the terms are well spelled out for each site, so thank you.
Thanks, sir. Director Jensen?
No, thank you to the Bertonis for agreeing to this.
Indeed.
It's much appreciated.
Anything else, sir?
No.
All right, I echo those comments, and.
Mr. President, I was
Yes.
just curious, are the Bertonis here?
I don't know. Okay, good question, no, I don't know them either. Right,
Do any of my fellow horse people know what this is gonna be named, what the trail is gonna be named?
I think they were calling it the Rising Moon.
Got it.
oh, it's next to a horse rescue, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay,
Great.
thanks, sir. Colleagues, let's go.
I move that the board accept the proposed deed of easement and further authorize staff to take all such actions necessary to cause the deed of easement to be recorded in the office of the Kern County Assessor Recorder.
Second.
Motion by Director Jensen, second by Director Quinn. Ms. McEwen?
Director Grace?
Aye.
Director Jensen?
Aye.
Director Quinn?
Aye.
President Han?
Aye, motion carries 4-0. Excellent. Item 13, information and discussion items. Board comments. Director Grace.
No comments tonight, sir.
Thank you, sir. Director Jensen.
I have comments tonight.
Great.
At the July meeting, Director Grace gave some very sage advice. If you want the people to be on your side, if you want measures V and W to be successful, and I quote, Please do not go out there and spread misinformation and lie about the issues. I'm cautioning you. If you want credibility in this community and you want people to believe you, you need to not lie and not spread misinformation and not cut other people down. Unfortunately, candidate Mitchell didn't heed that advice. Instead, she chose to tell a whopper about my son. Although I appreciate her apology today and I accept it, I can't blame her entirely. According to her, she had help, and I have no reason to doubt her. That help came from employees of the Bear Valley Police Department. And I'm sorry to say it's not the first time this has happened to me and or others in the community. 2 years ago when I ran for this office, an employee of the department was spreading a different lie about my son. What better way to discredit a chippy responsible for hundreds of DUI arrests over his career than telling people his son was arrested for DUI by the BVPD and that I got him off for it? Completely false. And I have proof of this. I wrote publicly about this on October 7th, 2020, and I left it at that. But now that this tale that Ms. Mitchell is telling has gotten so huge and so not even close to the truth, I'm going to push it now. Chief Suttles, I feel badly for you. You've inherited a mess here. You're a decent guy. I think you're a good fit for this community. And I really thought you were the best choice based on the two candidates that we interviewed. And I stick by that, even though my colleagues may not have had that initial choice. But I stand by it. But you've inherited a mess here. What Ms. Mitchell has done is demonstrate one of the pitfalls of locally controlled police departments. Your employees have used their access and positions to share information with the public that they had no right to share or need to share. But they've gone further than that. Not only have they embellished, but they've just outright lied to the public, as they did to Ms. Mitchell, who gleefully used that information for mutually beneficial reasons. They've turned the noble and honorable profession of police officers into political tools. They used Ms. Mitchell and others as their stooges, not to keep BVS safe, but to keep their jobs safe. Now with Ms. Mitchell's and the BVPD's ridiculous story having been told, I feel it necessary to say something about my son. My wife and I fostered and ultimately adopted our daughter and son when they were 6 and 8. They came from unspeakable circumstances. They had terrible, terrible starts in their lives, and they had tough times, but they've made it through, and I couldn't be more proud of them. My son graduated high school with his class despite some minor juvenile issues. He graduated from with his class from Tehachapi High School in 2014, immediately enlisted in the U.S. Army, served honorably, was honorably discharged, went into the Thurston County Sheriff's Department, where he's been working ever since, and then he re-enlisted back into the U.S. Army Reserves, where he's recently been promoted to sergeant. Again, I can't be more proud of him. Was he a perfect kid growing up? Absolutely not. Was I a perfect father? Definitely not. But in the end, his life is well beyond what my wife and I ever thought it would be, and we're very proud of him. And you can't take that away from him or us. That's all.
Director Brand?
I have nothing, thank you.
The Deep Pit Barbecue from the Sportsman's was scheduled for tomorrow. It's been canceled, and because of the rain that's coming. It's been moved to the 18th, and the Cultural Arts already had a concert going on that day. So now the Sportsman's and the Cultural Arts are teaming up to have the best party in Bear Valley since I don't know when. And so I make sure everybody knows about it on the 18th. Because of my being laid up for a little while, I've announced a chocolate chip cookie contest. All contestants are welcome. I'm the sole judge. And I may or may not need, and taster, and I may or may not need additional cookies after those to, right, that's all of my staff reports is Department Head Finance. Are you gonna give it tonight, or Bill? Okay,
Mr. President, members of the board, I stand for any questions you may have regarding our finances, for starters, and then I can comment after that.
thank you, sir. Finance report, public. Finance report, board. Awesome. Public Works report.
Mr. President,
What,
I was going to continue just briefly, on the finance. And-
Sure.
And so what you have before you is, the first month, and Perla has finished up the year-end report. I don't recall if we had sent that to you. Did I send that to you?
I put period 12 in the board package, so that was the year end.
Okay, well,
Did I-
then I will address that. My apologies. So, it's really an overall report. The general fund is in a positive. It generated a surplus. And even better than that, I think, is that the enterprise funds all generated surpluses and have begun to kind of come from, if you recall, we really towed the line in terms of the fund balance, got about as low as it could get as we were going through the rate adjustments. So now they are back in the black and moving ahead, and that is outstanding news. The only fund that really has some challenges was the roads fund. And even at that, it had about $100,000 deficit. Even at that, that's not bad, I'll just say. I think they're doing a fine job of managing what we give them. But overall, really an excellent year last year. And there may be some causes in terms of availability of things to buy, and just the nature of the economy and so on. But kudos to all of you supervisors and department heads for managing your budgets, because they do that, and they did a great job, so thank you.
anything else on finance report?
No, thank you.
Public Works report.
Mr. President, members of the board, you have our report, and we are available to answer any questions you may have.
Comments from the public? From the board? Yes? No, okay, thank you. Public safety report, Chief Suttles.
So this month, you have 3 reports that I gave you. So for June, July, and August. However, in doing these reports, I ran a self-audit, if you will, of the calculations that we use to come up with our response times. And I believe that I've identified a systemic error in the way that's been done since the inception of these calculations. The report that you have has the old calculation, because there are still some verifications that I need to do to make sure that my findings are correct. But I believe at this time that the response times, since the inception of giving response times on these reports, has been calculated incorrectly. With that, I stand for any questions.
Members of the public? Members of the board?
I have a few.
Sure, go ahead, sir.
Over the 3-month period, it seems like there were a lot of accidents at the gate, or incidents at the gate. Was there any common theme with those, or something that we can?
Mr. President, Board of Directors, there are 2 common themes that I'm seeing. One, I believe that people are not heeding the advice of some of the signs that are there on the RFID lane. There's a sign there that says, that indicates that it's 10 miles an hour speed limit. It also indicates that you should give 2 car lengths of distance between you and the car that's in front of you going through the RFID. What we're seeing is when we do have a collision between the gate and the car, I would say more times than not, almost every time, is because somebody wasn't doing one of those 2 things. They're either going a little too fast, in conjunction with being the second car. Usually the car comes through, opens the gate with the RFID, and the car behind it's either going too fast or following too closely, and it'll cause a collision with the vehicle. That's one. The other one that I see as a common thread is when people come through the visitor lane, if they conduct their business and the gate is opened, but then they think of something that they needed to ask. If they stay in that position for over a certain period of time, say 30 seconds, the arm will automatically come down. If that person's not paying attention and if the attendant's not paying attention and they're talking, which is often the case when this happens, the arm will come down, they'll finish their business, and then the person will start to drive off and strike the gate. So those are the two common things that I've seen.
Are we taking those as actual accidents, or are they just like incident reports, or?
I've been taking them as in the classification with through RIMS, it's information only, but however, I consider it a TC, it's a TC property damage.
So are those getting forwarded to SWITTers, or?
No.
No?
No, I'm not doing that.
Thank you for that. The June reports show an arrest with what looks like 2 subjects for sexual assault? Or was it 2 separate sexual assaults?
It was one, thank you for clarifying, Mr. President, Board of Directors, it's one incident with 2 suspects.
And were both suspects arrested and booked?
Yes, sir.
They were both booked?
Yes.
Okay. And have any charges been filed with the district attorney on that yet?
We were waiting for, no, we're waiting for toxicology. We were waiting for toxicology reports to come back. Those reports have come back. We have to re-interview some of the involved parties. And also, which has been conducted, and we had to do a 6-pack, a photo lineup. And now that that's been done, I'd say it was just last week, we submitted the final report.
Do we have actual trained, experienced sex crimes investigators on the department?
I don't have anybody that's trained in sex crimes, but I have people who have experience in criminal investigations.
Okay. So that's not something you would traditionally turn over to the sheriff's department that has a special victims unit?
Correct, we would not.
You wouldn't? A follow-up question for the May reckless driver that crashed on Bear Valley Road. Do you know if any charges were filed against that driver?
Reckless driving was filed, and a court date has been given.
So no DUI then?
No DUI. No, nothing came in the toxicology report. Nothing came. There was nothing in their system.
Okay. The officer that investigated that, how many DUI crashes have they investigated before that?
I'm not aware.
Let me ask you a few questions about records retention. Do we have records retention policies for various reports that we take?
We have a records retention policy for the records. Yes.
Okay. So like misdemeanor and felony reports, what would the retention periods be on those?
5 years.
5 years for both?
Yes.
Okay. Is that 5 plus the current, or the current plus 4?
5 from, no, 5 plus, so 5 total.
5 total?
Yes.
Can anyone get a copy of an arrest report?
If it's, essentially, unless it's been sealed for some reason, unless there's a reason, maybe the investigation is open, there may be other reasons, but essentially, yes.
Okay, anyone? It's like a public record then?
It could be, if someone's requested, then I would look at the request and determine whether or not the report can be released upon redaction. But essentially, the answer is yes, but there could be, depending on the report itself and what it shows, it could be heavily redacted.
Okay, and are your employees that release reports aware of those conditions?
Yes.
Okay. And how diligent are they in purging old reports, or do we just hang on to them for a while?
Well, I would have to audit that. I don't know the answer to that right now.
Okay. All right. That's it. I don't have any other questions.
Chief, thank you for wearing the badge, appreciate it. That concludes our public safety report. General Counsel report.
No report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. General Manager report.
I just wanna, put out some kudos again to the Fair Valley Springs Gardening Club and what work that they're doing at our Waterwise Garden, which was established many years ago, to give our residents some examples of the kind of decorative shrubs and ground covers and trees that you could grow here successfully in drought-tolerant kind of conditions, or drought conditions. And they have taken that project on with numerous people showing up. And if you haven't been out there, I would encourage everybody to go out and take a look at it. Certainly with the drought that we're in and the shortages on water, I think we all individually need to do what we can to conserve. But that's an example of what residents can do, and that garden club has really snapped this up, and we're giving them all the support that we can for materials and things. And they've got more work, and it's gonna get even better. But just a thank you and some gratitude to them for what they're doing for our community with that Waterways Garden. Aside from that, we had a good liaison meeting. I think there's some projects that'll be coming to the board for your consideration. One is the kitchen at the Mulligan Room. They indicated that they're gonna be doing something like that. And along with that, we've had our Parks and Recreation grant. We touched on it briefly at the liaison, and I've been able to tell Wesley about this, but we are exploring a different pump for the effluent to go to the golf course, okay? But we inquired whether we might use that grant, and they've said we could. And they've also thought that we could use that grant for that Mulligan Room kitchen redo and or expansion. So we'll see, that might be a real win for the BVSA through that grant that we've got. So let's see, those are new. We have a new employee in wastewater, Brad
Bolton. There's about 7 years experience with city attention in wastewater treatment. So.
Yeah, and dual certifications. And so as you know, we have the need for state licensure to be running a wastewater plant or to be operating our water distribution systems. And Brad has cross certification, so that's outstanding. And so we're happy to have him. I will stop there unless you have any questions.
Gentlemen?
I have a few questions.
I just got one quick one.
Go ahead.
The Waterwise Garden Bill, you mentioned we're doing everything we can to help. Can you give specifics? I know that we had talked generally about some funding of some sort, whether it's
Sure.
gift cards or
And
fuel allocations or something like that.
So heretofore, we were having a contractor maintain it. And so that individual's retired. The garden club picked this up on their own. We actually didn't go asking them. They saw the need. As an example, you'll see the walking paths and the rock. We bought the rock, we had it delivered over there so that it could be spread. You'll see some wood chip ground cover. We bought that, they spread it. So there's that kind of support, if you will. And from our budget, we're able to do that, just reusing those resources from the contracting to the materials. So it's a really great opportunity for us.
So, but mainly materials. And
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, our folks.
I'd love to see some direct personal support, whether it's a in and out lunch truck, you know, on the day that they're out there working or something like that, so.
Do you have a number for that? I think
A
more
cost
than just
number
that.
or a phone number?
Yeah.
Nothing. Thank you.
I'll pitch in on that.
Indeed.
So I don't want this to get swept under the rug. Can you address what happened with the water payment lockbox as Ms. Cooper was asking about? Just so everyone knows about it.
Sure. Mr. President, the lockbox appeared to have been broken into. So staff immediately called the police department and they responded and took a report. I'm not sure that the report, and Chief Suttles may address this because police department made the report. It didn't appear to have been pried open. The latch is one that, you know, in order to remove the key, you have to be in the locked position. So my perspective almost looks like somebody kicked it. But I'm not the cops and I didn't investigate this, so I'm just telling you what I think. That's what occurred somewhere on the weekend of, I think it's July 9, 10, something like that. And we discovered that Monday morning when staff arrived and went out to see what had been deposited. So.
How many customers' payments were lost?
I believe the number of folks that have talked to staff is 75.
75.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more than 17, which is what you had originally told me.
That's what I told you 2 months ago, yes, sir.
Yeah. Do we have the capability of sending out a mailing to all customers to advise them of a security breach like this?
Yes.
Why didn't we do it?
I'm gonna say, and I think this is and was an extraordinary situation, and I accept that it's something we can learn from. So, the fact that it was the checks and the mails, we've contacted and been in contact with all of those residents, and done what we could relative to their individual billings, so they're not being charged for late charges or anything like that as a result of this incident. So I think, yeah, it's an opportunity for us to learn.
So we didn't send out notification to all customers. We didn't issue a press release. We didn't use our social media to advise people that this would happen, that this had happened. It happened and was reported and discovered before the July board meeting. We could have made an announcement at that meeting saying, hey, if you dropped off your payment there over that weekend, you know, check your bank, stop your payment on your checks, do whatever you can. We didn't do any of that. Whose decision was it to not do any of that?
Well, ultimately, I'll take responsibility for everything. So you wanna talk about it that way, that's fine. I think our staff was working as best they could and with their experience and ideas. Ultimately, I'll be responsible.
How are the affected customers ultimately notified? Just self-notified by they get their next payment and it says?
Certainly that's one way. I'm not entirely sure of other outreaches from the staff, but I was told they reached out or have communicated with all of them.
And then why, in order to rectify the problem, why were customers told that they would have to come back multiple times to fix this? I mean,
I'm not familiar with that. I don't have that understanding. Most, from what I can tell you from talking with staff, most people pretty much just wrote another check and moved on. There were a couple, maybe a few, who looked for us to reimburse their stopped payment charge at the bank, which with the police report, I understand if you use the police report, you bring it to your bank because you're a victim, then you could have that waived by the banks. That's not us, but we certainly would reimburse someone if that were the case for them individually. So I've made that decision.
So that police department the police report that victims are given, it would have their name on it then, so they could present that to their bank or an insurance company or something like that, and the bank or the insurance company can see, yes, this person was a victim, we're gonna refund that money to you?
That's what I've understood.
So when a victim is given a report at the police department and has no victim information at all on it, how does that work?
I don't know.
Has that been addressed?
I can address that portion of it. So essentially, when you have this type of crime, what we have is a burglary that has taken place to this. The victim is the CSD. When I had the report taken, we took the list of potential victims, I guess you could call them, because at this point the victim is the CSD. What's been taken are pieces of paper. That's actually what's been lost. Until we find somebody in possession with them with the intent to use them illegally, then it becomes a different crime altogether. But until that point, it's still the CSD that's the victim. So the list was taken just as that, as a list, and attached to the report as an attachment. If anybody were to find that they believe that they're a victim of the crime, we can open up a different report as an identity theft or whatever that appropriate crime would be that's associated to this. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I understand that the district is the victim because it was their box that was essentially burglarized, if that's what happened. But for your employees that are giving out the reports, one of which I know was given out without showing any ID. I mean, I don't know if that's common practice to not take ID from someone being given a report, but there's nothing there that identifies this person as a victim. So they can take that to their bank, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
What they were given.
Right, I understand that, and that's what I'm saying, if somebody needs that, if they have that kind of need, they can come to us and we can determine how to assist them there, but I don't have a police report that lists them as a victim. If they need a police report that shows that they had an item, if there was another police report that listed the CSD as a victim, whereas something was taken or stolen that had their name and their identifying information on it, I could perhaps write a supplemental to that report for that person to be able to take it to their bank if needed.
Okay. Unfortunately, victims, people, I mean, you've been in this business long enough, they're not savvy enough to know that. They're just gonna come to the police department, take what they're given, and then go away with it, and then ultimately go to their bank or whoever and give that to them, and they're gonna say, oh, this doesn't help me, your name's not on it. And they're gonna go back to the police department and get what you're talking about, and then go back to their bank again, or whoever. I mean, I'm just asking if your staff understands to explain that to people when they come for these reports.
Yeah, we certainly don't want people to feel that ping pong effect, where you go to one place and tell you one thing. That does happen, especially in identity theft. It happens quite a bit. So we don't want that. And my hopes would be that if somebody were to come in that conversation, the purpose would come up. Because you're right, I don't have it set up that I have 75 reports with each individual listed as a victim, because I don't have that yet. If someone has that need, that's again the way I would do that is through a supplemental report, listing that person as a other party or something of that nature, indicating what happened. But yeah, my staff understands the need behind that, because there has been a discussion specifically to this case that people, and that was part of the discussion. It's like, well, are these individuals victims, or are they not victims, and that did come up. So there is an understanding specific to this case. So, yes.
And then when we write reports and the district is the victim and the reporting party is an employee of the district, do we typically put the reporting party's home address and personal phone number in there? I mean, essentially doxing them, or should we be using the district address and phone number?
No, we absolutely should be using their work address, and that's been corrected. But yeah, you're absolutely right, we should be using that.
And do the preparers of reports usually review their own reports and sign them off, or should that be happening at the next level?
That occurrence is not unusual. If I had a department that had a watch sergeant who sat at the desk and didn't go on patrol, then that person's function would be to read these reports as they come through. However, the way that we have ours set up is that our sergeant is a patrol officer as well. He takes on multiple duties. So it's not unusual for him to be in the field and to take a report. And if you were to wait for me to come and approve all reports, and I would be holding reports for an extended period of time, which I don't like. I would like to have all reports done by the end of the work week. So, no, it's not unusual here because of our circumstances.
Well, we were holding that report anyway, waiting for further affected
Right.
parties to
Right,
come in
because-
anyway.
And I agree with that, that this is a circumstance in which we were holding it, for that reason, because we understand that this is a different circumstance.
All right. Thank you for all of that. Getting back to the lockbox though, so this all happened and no notifications, and we left the lockbox in service as if nothing ever happened, not knowing if, maybe the lock didn't work, maybe it was picked, maybe it's easy to pick. At what point do we decide this isn't a good idea to use, we need to do something else, something more safe, something more secure? At what point do we do that? Or at least at what point do we tell the customers, hey, this box was broken into, use it at your own risk?
I don't have a date or a time frame for making that decision. Certainly it's a legitimate thought process.
Just some final words on this. In my professional capacity, I investigated hundreds of identity theft cases, and I know how hard it is for people to clear these from their lives. They go on and on and on, and what people had submitted into this lockbox, they weren't just pieces of paper. They were checks with bank account numbers, routing numbers, names, addresses, phone numbers, all the personal information that an identity thief can profit from. And we made no notifications. This was completely unacceptable. That's it.
Anything else for the general manager report? We have future agenda items, Ms. McEwen?
I don't have any.
All right. Thanks everyone for attending tonight's board meeting. I'll adjourn till the next regularly scheduled board meeting, which is October 13th, 2022. Drive home safely.
Thank you.
Martine.
All right.